Welcome back. You're still watching Your Story on SA Today. Now, KwaZulu-Natal Premier Sihle Zikalala has introduced his executive council to King Goodwill Zwelithini at the Nongoma. Zikalala had talks with the regent and agreed that relations between the government and the Ingonyama Trust Board be strengthened and that the court battles be avoided. To get us a little bit of analysis on the situation, I'm now joined by political analyst Xolani Dube. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to the program.
Let me humble myself to you, Peter, as well as to the viewers.
Wow, thank you so much. So there has been this tension between the legislature, as we understand it, particularly in the province, and traditional leadership. And so today, the Premier arriving with his executive council, I suppose in many ways they're trying to start a new chapter, but there's going to be some tensions.
What is very interesting? Yeah, for me, it was like a medieval kind of a ritual where you find modernity, really. It was a set situation where you find a modernity kneeling to a fiefdom. And I don't see KwaZulu-Natal being a very progressive province because South Africa is a constitutional democracy and there is an electorate and the people who elected the current, cabinet or the ANC in that province, surely they are really sad that after they've worked so hard to put them into power, the ANC is not going back to acknowledge their effort, but they go to the other side. And so I think to a certain extent is a lack of comprehension from the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal to understand the modernity and its politics and what the constituency of the ANC as a ruling party really wants. Because you'll understand that the issue of the royal household pertaining the Ingonyama Trust is kind of a very thorny issue in KwaZulu-Natal because to a certain extent, a number of people are arguing that the Ingonyama Trust is very exploitative and to a certain extent is disempowering the right of ownership to a number of people. And so I don't understand what kind of reconciliation that they were doing and on whose behalf were they doing that reconciliation.
Right. So how will they negotiate their way forward? Because clearly there is this battle between what we understand as traditional leadership and, as you say, modernity. Recently the Supreme Court of Appeal ruled in favor of the Ingonyama Trust so that the municipality couldn't collect rates and taxes on Ingonyama Trust land. So sometimes we're seeing the law dipping in favor of traditional leadership and not so in other areas. I mean, this is a difficult juggling trick, I would imagine.
Now, the latest court verdict, it supported the so-called the constitutional group that was representing the women in KwaZulu-Natal especially. And then they won that court case. And the Ingonyama Trust was at the receiving end. And the issue of the ANC, as a political organization representing the modernity, the ANC is there at the behest of the electorate. Those are the people that the ANC is supposed at all time to safeguard their interest. And the issue of land, we live, as I said, in a constitutional democracy. South Africa is a country that's got one president. And so KwaZulu-Natal is not a country within a country. And so for the issue of tension between the traditional leaders as well as the so-called the cabinet or the legislature in KwaZulu-Natal, I don't think that the governing party was supposed to go and kneel. The governing party has got rules in our country that governs the land, of which they are supposed to throw that book to the face of the Ingonyama Trust. And bear in mind that the Ingonyama Trust is not operating independent. It's not an independent institution, but it was created by the same government, of which is the same government that can make reviews about the existence of this Ingonyama Trust.
Why do you think then the ruling party is struggling to follow through on that mandate of the people then, as you've put it?
As I'm saying, they lack to understand the comprehension of the politics of modernity. And maybe to a certain extent, there is that inborn Zulu-ness within this cabinet, of which maybe is not easy just to do away with. But I think they have to, because a number of people are no longer staying in rural areas. Rural areas are becoming a kind of really economic inactive spaces in KwaZulu-Natal, and people are becoming more urbanized. And so for ANC, I think its responsibility in KwaZulu-Natal is to develop the rural areas rather than to go and kneel at the royal household.
All right, so you've said that the ANC lack the comprehension of modernity. Could the other side be true as well, that the king is lacking a comprehension of modernity?
No, the king obviously, him, it is his advantage. If the other ones are ignorant, they don't know their right, they don't know their authority. The king knows his authority. That's why he keeps on pushing these guys. And then these guys, that's why they keep on moving back. And then now, as they've won the election, strangely, they go back to the king. The king has not went to the legislature to say, guys, can we work together? They went to him. And so it shows the power of strength that the KwaZulu-Natal rural household still commands a serious power in that province. And so the other one are disempowered. And so, in power relations, it was a kind of a show of a power relation today where, as I'm saying, the whole cabinet will go and introduce itself to the king.
But isn't that what President Ramaphosa did when he was newly installed? He went on a walkabout and met with traditional leaders. Isn't this really just a continuation of that?
I think, look, we have to understand that the ANC, to a certain extent, is try to be popular at certain stage in time, but that also play a very negative role to its authority. That's why you can see kings and headsmen and all these traditional lords can simply push the ANC left and right. But the ANC must understand that this is a democratic country ruled by a democratic constitution, and president has got a constitutional right where he is supposed to apply the rules of this country across, because all of us, we subscribe to the same Bill of Rights. And so the king of the Zulus of the Xhosa or somewhere in Venda, they are just ordinary citizens of South Africa. And so we must not be in an animal farm where other people are going to be more important than the
That's
other.
the law, and constitutionally, yes. But in reality, culturally, they're not ordinary citizens. And that there are many, many citizens who revere them more than they revere the president. How do you balance the constitution then and what's in the hearts and minds of many people?
Look, society has evolved. If people want to stagnate in fiefdom, let them do that. But let the fiefdom space not be in conflict with modernity. That's what is very important. And if we want to accommodate those who subscribe to the fiefdom rules and authority, let them be accommodated according to the rules and the norms of democratic constitutionalism. Because if we are not going to do that, we are going to find ourselves into a serious trouble. Because the issue of land, especially for it to fall in KwaZulu-Natal, it was the acknowledgement of this Ingonyama Trust. And this Ingonyama Trust, you have to understand that it was a compromise during the 1994 elections. And that compromise needs to be reviewed, because number of people in KwaZulu-Natal, when you talk about land, is not belonging to them. It's still under the administration of this Ingonyama Trust. And this Ingonyama Trust, to a certain extent, is not playing a kind and a fair role to the people of KwaZulu-Natal. And so that's why I'm saying the KwaZulu-Natal ANC is failing really to understand the comprehension of modernity. And it was the KwaZulu-Natal in the 54th National Conference of the ANC that was advocating for what we call it land expropriation without compensation. And so they must act on it. Lots of people are expecting for those resolutions to be applied fairly.
So what you're saying is that we should do away with things like the Ingonyama Trust, land be allocated to people, given title deeds so that they can own the land, and the kings and the chiefs become figureheads more than they are with real power.
Look, we have Orania as we speak. You get what I mean? It's another kind of modern fiefdom that is happening there in the Northern Cape. Number of people in South Africa, they look at that thing as kind of white supremacy preservation. You get what I mean? And so why we were going to have other preservations in other areas, you get what I mean? Because South Africa is a one country. And so even that Ingonyama Trust, to a certain extent, if you look at it, is very regressive in terms of building South Africa as a nation, because we can't have a particular institution serving an interest of a particular tribe in a country that is supposed to serve the whole people of South Africa. And so that's why I'm saying, for the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal to go there and kneel to the King of the Zulu, I think to a certain extent it was very embarrassing. I think they could meet somewhere and really negotiate and bargain about the existence of the royal household as well as of this Ingonyama Trust.
Yeah. Okay, perhaps finally, I mean, the king seemed to be asserting himself. He says that, look, the problems of the past were a lack of communication and understanding between traditional leaders and government. If the ruling party in the province continues on the path that it is, which seems to be trying to accommodate, what is the likely scenario that will play out downstream, given the tensions you've raised?
When you look at the current, maybe they are trying to be like in Zimbabwe or in other African countries where the modern political organization lose power in urban areas, and then they try to find refugee in rural areas. But if they are trying to come up with that strategy, they must be aware that in rural areas in KwaZulu-Natal there is an IFP. And IFP by its conception is very rural, you get what I mean? And so they can't simply uproot it just like that. And so maybe we can say the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is floating, is trying to find its constituency, and as they were kneeling to the king, they were saying, please give us the constituency, because remember that prior the election, there was that hostility, and the KwaZulu-Natal, in terms of the elections, it went into 50-something. Quite strange. It has never been in before. And so I think maybe they were saying they lost or they bleeded a lot of electorate because there was that hostility, and then they go to the king to kneel to say, in future, because we have local government election, can we untap to the reserve of the rural area so that we can have more electorate? But I can assure you, that strategy is not going to work. I think the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal really, it needs to sit down and do a really introspection to say, if they do certain things, are they not ossifying what we call it tribalism or Zulu nationalism, something that really South Africa is not ready to stomach on or ready to embrace.
Xolani, so I guess your bottom line is that they should sit with the king, not kneel before him.
They must negotiate with the king. They must bargain.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for your insights on this day. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
All right.